he's driving home tonight. He has no like. It was the mildest of fake protest. Yeah. He was like, "How dare you?" I'm like, "You're not here. I will find someone else." Yeah, I'm just gonna sit here. I'm gonna go party. And by the party, I mean go to a panel in a bookstore. Yeah, and have a nice dinner. Yeah, like adult. I really like the sense of it. One of my very, very favorite things falling down. Oh my God. And then all of a sudden I have like 6 windows open with 40 tabs that I've like separated out into, oh, well, I want to read about this thing that's linked, but it's not related to them. So I'm going to pull this off in a new window. So like, shit, now I got 40 tabs in my thing. Yeah. Have you ever played the wiki game? Yeah. Very fun. Okay, amazing. Amazing. I love that. So do you have like I feel like everybody who is like when they feel like has a top. So like and I'll bring them. But it's so random. It's like here's random type of parents that they use. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know. This is what I'm learning. I have definitely found over the years that like people that I am like
Ooh, hello everyone. It is a pleasure to see you all here. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Um, Hello again. My name is Destiny. I work here at City Bookshop as a bookseller and book club coordinator. I facilitate 5 clubs here, one of which is Really Reading Romance. Woo! Got a couple of y'all here. Love to see you always. So we have tons of amazing events at this store. I'm not just saying that because I work here, but it's because it's true. You can learn more about them on our website or on the beautiful events shelf here, as well as book clubs, anything your heart desires. I'm sure it's covered there. So you can check it out and make sure to sign up. But of interest to folks here, we have a few upcoming events that are listed on our website, but I do want to highlight. You may have seen the event on Sunday, but unfortunately, that event with Nalini Singh and Denise Williams is sold out. I know, I know. It went like hotcakes so quickly. So sorry about that. However, she will be Nalini and Denise will both be signing stock. So keep your eyes out for that if you weren't able to get in. We also have coming up very soon a great big beautiful happy hour, which is in honor of Emily Henry's upcoming book. Emily Henry herself will not be here. I always have to put that disclaimer. She will not be here. However, a lot of Emily Henry lovers will be. So you can definitely sign up for that. And then we also have a virtual event with Nalini Singh, and that's on May 5th. And it's for the upcoming Archangel's Ascension, which is a much anticipated book for any of our Guild Hunter lovers. So just flagging those upcoming events. We have tons of others that might interest you. Make sure to check out our website, etc. For anyone who's new here, restrooms are upstairs and past the register. And we have books for sale up there as well. So I'm sure after you hear lovely authors speak today, you will want to get all of their backlists. We have that for you. The last thing is if you could go ahead and silence your cell phones, I would be very appreciative. And a hello and warm welcome to our virtual audience as well. We will be taking questions from you in addition to our audience that is here in the flesh. All right. With all that said, I am going to go ahead and introduce our authors for this evening's panel, Romance is Resistance. Elizabeth Everett is the USA Today best-selling author of the critically acclaimed Secret Scientists of London and Damsels of Discovery series. Elizabeth regularly writes and speaks about feminism and the romance genre. Her work is inspired by her admiration for rule breakers and belief in the power of love to change the world. Amalie Howard is a USA Today and Publishers Weekly best-selling author of smart, sexy, deliciously feminist romance. Her novels have received national awards, star trade reviews, and have been featured in many publications. She also writes young adult fiction as well as books for young readers. Her newest novel, Lady Night, is what she will be speaking about, and the Lady Sparks of Fame for Elizabeth Everett, I forgot to mention. Joanna Lowell lives among the fig trees in North Carolina, where she teaches in the English department of Wake Forest University. When she's not writing historical romance, she usually writes other things, and those books include Dan, Another Governess, The Least Blacksmith, and others. Today, we are going to be exploring how love stories set in the past can be far more than swoon. They can be resistance. Historical romance has the power to rewrite, reclaim, and resist dominant narratives, all through the act of centering joy, intimacy, and autonomy. Please join me in welcoming our three lovely authors, Joanna, Amalie, and Elizabeth. Ooh la la, the price is right of it all. Okay, let's get comfortable. Hello. Long time no see. It's been a grand total of 5 minutes. Okay. Well, hello, welcome, and so glad to have you here. I'm like, ooh, how shall I torture them first? But I think I'll lead us in easy. Elizabeth said I had some tough questions, but I feel like I don't, but I'll lead us in easy. She did. I know, of all people. Panel's done. We're done. Not all of them. Okay, so I am curious. What are some tropes? Make sure you just flip it up if it's not, and keep it closer so we can hear you. All right. I'm interested in knowing from you all, what are tropes that you think work in a current context that may not work as well in a historical context, or vice versa? That's not hard. all of you are like, ooh. For everybody in online, they're like,
I was super ready for what's your favorite trope. Like,
well, you can say like,
da.
ooh, but like, do you feel like there are tropes that you're like, ooh, yeah, that works?
I have a maybe an I have an I'm gonna take it in a different direction.
Whatever you want to do.
Just because my last couple of romances are queer romances, and a trope that I really love is fake dating, because I mean, it's just one of the greats. But it is, I think, harder to write fake dating in a queer romance, because just like nobody generally societally is like desperate to see you in a queer relationship, right? And that's like often the thing that is going on with the, the fake dating. Like, the matriarch of the family needs to know that you're settled down with your super hot trans boyfriend. Like, that's not that's like not often the thing. Alexis Hall does it really amazingly in boyfriend material, but I feel like how to create a super messy character who then needed to like clean up his reputation through dating. So that's not historical version, but I was just thinking of a trope that like in different contexts resonates differently, and there's like a different set of challenges.
I literally was like, enemies to lovers, damn it. Fake dating, damn it. Marriage of convenience, crap. Like, I don't even know what would
do you
work.
think like marriage of convenience works well in a current context?
Oh.
I
mean, look, yeah. You don't you read those billionaire romances? I'm still waiting. I keep telling my husband they'll come along and they'll take us as a package. And then that'll be great.
I mean, listen, you're the writer. You tell me.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's hear what Elizabeth has to say. She's always so mouthy. Come on, STEMinist.
Here we go. Okay. Not even 5 minutes into the thing, and
I
already
love
we're-
it. She's the one who started it. I'm looking at my Instagram stories and she's like, we had a panel this morning and she's like, Amalie Howard looks like she's talking garbage. I'm like, why are you so obsessed with me? That was my response.
Garbage. It was-
We're all
it was
obsessed with you.
garbage, really. What tropes work contemporarily but don't work historically,
Or vice versa.
or vice
Or in
versa?
different contexts. I love how
No,
Joanna pulled
no,
that.
I don't think that. I think that marriage convenience is so easy to do historically,
Yeah.
and is so difficult to do in a contemporary.
Well, it depends, right? Also, culturally, that might make a difference, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I just
I mean, I didn't have a date for prom, and my dad was like, "Would you like me to have an arranged marriage for him?" Like, this is prom, Dad. I don't want to meet your neighbor's cousin's son. Thank you.
were you not matched by the time you were 17? Because in Italian families back in the day, we were
This is why I left. I ran away. I went to Maine.
the exact opposite.
I
of
know.
Trinidad.
Exactly.
I think I'm gonna be thinking about that, like tropes in different contexts, not necessarily like the historical versus contemporary paradigm, but
But the
Well,
cultural one,
yeah.
Just, I mean, another thing, like, secret baby is a trope that people have a lot of feelings about.
Many.
But
Yeah.
I'd say, like, in a moment where Roe has been overturned, like, secret baby, like it hits,
not so fun. Not
hit-
so fun.
not the funnest, right? And so, you're like, why aren't I reading a historical about abortion care providers, for example? So, I just think, like, I don't know, you look for different things in different moments.
I have gained a brain cell just listening to you all right
That's
now.
a really good question, though. I mean, I would like to. What do you guys think about that question? It's an.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I've not.
It
thought
hurt
about
my
Thank you.
brain.
Yeah, and mine was dead. So like,
Well, you took
I'm
a
trying to think
NyQuil.
of what the tropes are that because it's an excellent question.
Yeah, I don't have the answer. That's why I asked. But I mean, it's something I think about. I think when I see sort of people take things and like I think of it as a trope retelling, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I find people do like interesting things in
not
different
just
ways
one
I'm not
bed. Like I'm
expecting.
trying to think of all the other
Yeah,
tropes that are
Yeah, like trope retellings as opposed to a different context per se. But yeah, that's really
Like Grumpy Sunshine.
No, that's feral cat and golden retriever. I've changed. I've added feral cat. I added the feral.
arguing about
I like that.
nomenclature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you ever feel constrained by readers' expectations of what fits in a historical romance? And do you subvert or lean into those expectations that you think are there?
Well, I mean, my thought is basically somebody wants just about anything
Yeah.
out there, right? I mean, I guess if you're trying to, in a very broad sense, play to a middle to sell as many books as possible, then there's a constraint there. But I generally think if there's something that I really want to see, maybe there's at least an other weirdo out there who
Yeah.
wants to see it too. But yeah, I mean, I think because we are writing to find readers, and then I'm traditionally published, so what sells really does matter, in terms of the editor being willing to buy more books or what have you. That I do in those conversations have to think about what people want to buy. But so A Sure Thing is my most recently published historical romance. It features a transmasculine hero and a cis woman botanist. Oh, right there. They're on a bicycle ride. Because Rad is my favorite movie. I'm happy to talk more about that if anyone wants to hear bicycle BMX inspiration. But there weren't that many, maybe just maybe just A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall in the
Yeah.
traditionally published historical romance space with a trans hero. And so it was something that I really wanted to write, and I really wanted to collaborate with my partner who's a trans historian and put a book like that out there with the like romance that looked like ours, and like with our sort of joint research based imagining kind of. And there was a big conversation with the editor about if we could do it and how to go forward with it, if we were willing to sort of put in the book that we're queer and trans. And it was, nobody ever asked me if I was straight enough to write the other books that I wrote. It was, but I like understand the desire to feel like books are, if they're about marginalized characters, that the people writing them like share experience with those characters. And we were like absolutely willing to do that. And it was really, exciting for me to like put that book out, and there weren't many. And so, they hasn't sold amazingly as a result, possibly. I mean, historical romance generally doesn't sell amazingly. This is something that we talk about. So I don't know, I guess when you really want to write something, I think you should do it. But then obviously there are actual material things that might hold you back and that other people are going to be thinking about who may or may not publish your books.
There's a lid for every pot. We just got to find the pot maker.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about that?
I feel like as writers, we're constantly subverting the genres as well. We talk about women subverting, social expectations and stuff in historical romance, but like, you have the old school books written by, like Georgette Heyer and Barbara Cortland. People are like, have these expectations of what to expect. And we're like, well, no, we're going to write historical to reflect the world that we live in. And oh, by the way, we are going to show you that queer people, people of color, and people with disabilities did exist in these times. They just weren't written about because, what's the Robespierre quote, right? History is written by the victors. And that if we ask the right questions, we'll get the answers to those questions. So I think in terms of just subverting like the genre itself, like we as writers are bringing different things to the table that reflects the world that we live in. So it's not necessarily like a Bridgerton approach, which is, it's cosmetic because it's inclusive, which is awesome, but it's like let's include everyone. Whereas you have books that have actual historical figures that are written about that. You could talk about Catherine Dulip Singh was a lesbian woman of color who lived in the Victorian era and Queen Victoria's court, and she was a princess who outranked many people. I'm trying to think of like the woman from The Duke in question was like a spy that was Mary Bowser. I think it was Mary Richards Bowser, I think her name was. She was a Black spy that was amazing. And she, I reference in all my author's note when I bring up these characters.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to say anything about that before I follow up? I think it's a good segue into another question I have for you, which is,
Why didn't you hold my book up and do that weird thing?
you know what? You should have.
All
That's true. That's true. Yeah, make sure we get Lady Night also some airtime. So yeah, in many historical contexts, love, especially for marginalized people.
Your face isn't working. You have to look nicer.
By the way, all three of these books, amazing. We can in this room fix the historical romance sales issue. I believe it.
Yeah.
But
Can I put this in my boobs?
it kind of matches.
God,
It kind of
we're supposed to go
matches.
forever.
Just saying. So in many historical contexts, love, especially for marginalized people, was like in a way counter to the narrative, right? So I'm wondering, how do you approach portraying love that defies whatever the norm is socially for that time? How, both in research, in your writing, however you want to answer this question, but how do you approach writing for, like, for example, in your latest book, Elizabeth, you have a a female main character that self-harmed, which is something that, is an experience that many people may have, but is not necessarily portrayed in a historical context. That is not funny. This is funny. But yeah, so I'm just curious how you approach writing that and researching that.
So last week I had an event with Loretta Chase.
Oh, what a flex.
Guys.
Got a name
Yeah.
drop.
Saying the Gen
Uh-huh.
Zers here.
And she was nice to me. She was awesome. But
Did she know who you were?
she
Well, no, oh my God.
You want to copy?
Okay. No, if I walked up to Loretta Chase, I would not expect her to know who I am.
I only sent her like 50,000 emails. I only
Okay, so there you go.
I mean, I made myself known.
So she was
Yeah.
like
She had
Loretta
no
Chase.
She had
To
no
me, to get
chance.
name dropped by Loretta Chase.
She
that's
didn't name drop me.
okay.
She was like, "What's your name again?"
Oh, okay,
I was
fine.
like,
We're working
"Hello
on it. We're
there."
working toward it. Okay.
But she backed me up because woo,
Ooh.
I said in my author's note, there's a letter, like a beware reader letter in the beginning of Ladies Sparks of Flame, because I do the main character self-harmed when she was an adolescent. And I said in there kind of what I say obliquely in all of my dear reader letters or all of my afterwards, that history is written through a lens. And just because historians to date have not held in, have not sought out the writings and the history of adolescent women, doesn't mean that they didn't exist in that time and that they didn't have the same problems that adolescent women have today. That non-suicidal self-injury is a phenomena that has been recorded for quite a while, and there's no reason to believe that it didn't happen before we started recording the lives of adolescent girls. The fact is that the lives of, say, country doctors or country vicars or men of business or men in general were not valued more. They were valued more. They are the source of much of our quote unquote history. Doesn't negate the fact that these girls existed, that that people of color existed, that everyone that we love in our own lives were there. And just because we don't have a record of them doesn't mean they didn't exist. So that is something that I try and get across in everything that I write. Is I never say historically accurate anymore, because I think that's a phrase that we use, that some people use to exclude other people from history. Well, it's not historically accurate, which means it's not in the records that have survived. The records that have survived have been curated by people with a certain point of view, right? So I say period appropriate, because we do have records of what was period appropriate or not. But anytime anyone questions me about any of my characters, and whether they're queer characters, whether they're BIPOC characters, whether they're women, and say, well, how do you know? I always counter with, how do you know they don't? How do you know that people were not accepting and kind and loving 200 years ago? Why would it be that if today there are people in your life who you love, who are disabled, or who are different in any way, and you love them and it doesn't make a difference? Why would it be that 200 years ago people were terrible? How is it we didn't become better people in the intervening 200 years? We just, I mean, if you ask me,
Yeah.
right? I mean, take a look today.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone downhill, right? So, so that's something that's important to me, that I always like to talk about when I talk about these books, when I talk about history, when I talk about especially women in history, is you have to just consider the historical record that's been kept, who's kept it and why.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be critical of the idea of historical accuracy, just because certain people are overrepresented, certain stories are left out. But I think that Courtney Milan in an interview once talked about historical accuracy, and she said that she didn't want her novels to be historically accurate. She wanted them to be historically extraordinary. Like the idea that like this could have happened. There isn't a record that it actually happened, but why couldn't it have happened? Which I think speaks to what you're saying. Yeah.
And also when you started with the whole expectation thing, right? If people walk into stuff having an expectation, they're not really open-minded to anything else that, I mean, because you already have a preconceived notion of something, which is where you were coming from. But when Elizabeth asked me actually to read her book, Lady Sparks of Flame, as a person who suffered from NSSI when I was a teen, I was worried about reading it. And I remember telling her, oh, I don't know if I can. And I did read it, and it was very thoughtfully represented, which I think is really important to have these kinds of books to show that, women who have self-harm issues did exist. People with you know, um, neurodivergent issues also did exist. I mean, I have ADHD, I'm OCD, and seeing those in books, I think are important. Not just like, I mean, we're talking about inclusion in terms of like, like not just a person of color. I like seeing invisible disabilities as well as physical disabilities, and also awareness. I don't know what I was saying. I was just rambling.
I'm here for the ramble. Not to be on the nose, but how do you see romance, whether historical or otherwise, as a form of resistance and opportunity for that? And or if you're like, that question's kind of boring to me, which of your characters do you think really embodies resistance, either quietly or boldly?
Well, I think Zia from Lady Night is definitely embodying resistance because she is she's a society young lady who's told that she has to get married to be important, that's the only goal she has in life. And she says, no, I want to be a pianist. I want to learn how to, do all the things that the boys do. So in this book, she forms a radical book club, and they read Frankenstein, which was written by Mary Shelley in 1819. And a lot of the men were like, that's too gothic and too murdery for our young women to read it. So they were reading subvertively in the background and discussing it. They also discussed Mary Shelley's mother, who was Mary Wollstonecraft, who is the mother of modern feminism. Say that fast. I said the modern of modern feminism. That was awful.
I'm not gonna
Anyway, you guys, I've been up since 8 o'clock. We had like a paddle this morning. I'm like so tired. But and they go horse racing at midnight. They fight duels, fence in underground clubs for money. They steal from their brother's friends to save an orphanage. Some of the choices aren't great, but she learns along the way, and she also assesses her privilege because she does have a moment where she overhears somebody being sentenced, and a person got sentenced to death for stealing a brooch. And she's like, well, that won't happen to me probably because I'm an aristocrat. And it was true. So she does recognize her privilege. And I mean, she does learn that obviously what she's doing is wrong, but she is really trying to subvert. And then she meets her brother's best friend, Rafi, who is super possessive. He's like a reformed rake. And he's really, really great, and he's very supportive of her, even with some of her bad actions, like the stealing. Because she stole his ring.
Women behaving quote unquote badly is already resistance. I like that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's like, here are the rules, and you're like, I want to stomp on the rules.
There you
I don't
go.
care about the rules.
She sure does.
Yeah.
And it works for a while.
Thank you. I like that about her. She's one of my favorite heroines just because she was so unapologetic. Oh, and the music that she plays is what was called prepared piano in the 1930s, which is where you put bolts and rubber and parchment on the strings. So the sound is super discordant. For someone like me, it's awful because like I'm neurodivergent, but like I listened to it and I was like, it's really interesting. Check it out.
Yeah. Love
But that didn't exist. But there were musicians that did that, even though it wasn't defined. Again, back to what we were talking about, something that didn't have a name doesn't necessarily mean it didn't exist.
Any other characters of resistance, or how romance is resistance in your estimation?
How romance is resistance in my estimation, because instead of greed or fear, romance centers love, and that is radical, right?
And I like to think about Bell Hooks's definition of love as an action instead of a feeling, and love as the practice of freedom. And I think romance novels, I mean, not all, it's a big genre, not all of them, but the romance novels that I really love really focus on interdependence, respect, community, mutuality, and they center emotional life. And I do think that is a beautiful and radical thing. And insofar as romance is escapist, I think on the one hand, it like, shows us a slightly idealized world that shines a light back on our own historical in particular. We were talking about this in the car ride here by sort of estranging the familiar and having it, like fantasy does this, historical romance does this. We're able to kind of engage with issues that are maybe harder to see with new eyes because we're so accustomed to them, like in the everyday. But even insofar as it, is escapist, I think we need these escapes so we can stay in this world and keep concretely working for change at, every sort of level, from like community interaction and engagement to sort of policy to who knows what we're going to have to do in the streets. And so I just think, having these spaces where we can imagine and breathe and feel good will enable us to keep going. And in my most recent book, A Sure Thing, the hero, Kit, who's a trans man and an artist. I mean, one of the things that he's really grappling with is what does it mean to be a man? Like, he's somebody who's come up through this like circle of women artists, like fighting for women to have equal rights. He's like a barn burning feminist. And now, because it's truer to his sense of himself, he's living as a man and he's trying to figure out like what is masculinity without oppression, or like what does it mean to be a man without patriarchy? Is being a man being able to dominate others? He doesn't want to dominate others. So what is his masculinity? And I think, to be on the nose again, like that's an important question. Like what is masculinity? Like how does patriarchy function? Like when man must dominate nature and dominate non-human animals and dominate women, like that's obviously a societal problem that we need to fight, that's linked with all the other struggles against oppression. And so it's something that I think, I don't know, in this space, this historical romance novel, it's a very a sort of topical thing that my partner and I think about in our lives as like educators, like mentoring queer students and just sort of being in the world of the South. And so yeah, romance, resistance, history.
I thought that was beautifully explored in that book. And I love this idea of romance as fuel for resistance, not just as resistance itself. I really like that. You were gonna say something? Oh,
No, I was going to say, I think the beauty of romance is that love makes space for everyone, right? It's not finite and it can expand and be whatever you need it to be. In terms of like it being fuel for resistance, you always look back as like when people say you have to fight for love, you got to work for love, or, or if someone is worth fighting for, there's all these sayings with the word fight in it. So it's already there, right?
And I would say too that you can, I always think about romance and love in conflict with the patriarchy. And I always think about centering love is a resistance to centering fear, which many people would rather we do because it's profitable, as well as it's a way to manipulate people. And I always think, listen, you can create a family without fear, but you can't create a family without love in some way. You can create community without fear, but community really thrives. It's created through love. Like all of those things that we value, that we say we value, it doesn't matter what part of the spectrum you're on, or it doesn't matter if you're conservative or progressive. These things that we say we value, those are all created through or fueled by love. And they're all taken down or torn down or hindered by the opposite of love. So I think that's, in this case, we're talking about love as a resistance because we're facing a time where
well, it's going to be really hard to love your neighbors sometimes.
Yeah.
Love family members, love anything, and it takes work, right? And the thing about it is, we were talking about it at breakfast this morning, that human beings skew negative much more easily than they do positive, and it takes effort and intentional thinking to actually think in a positive manner. In the same way, love is resistance, because loving somebody who does something terrible to you goes against our nature, right? But maybe that's what we need.
Yeah, because I can't think of a civilization that we emulate or we glorify that still exists that have been based around fear and oppression. The societies and the communities and the men and women that we honor were always those that operated through love, right? there's a reason why some people are demonized and some people are emulated.
Wow, you guys just made me I feel, as I said, my brain is expanding. I love that. So you made me think. Now I'm hoping you'll make me chuckle. Um how was that transition, guys? Yes, no, yes. Okay. So you all have historical, we're talking about historical romance, so I'm going to keep it in this context. If you were to time travel, which of your characters would you like to be your time traveling guide? Like, you can reveal you are from the future. You can reveal, like, yo, I need some help. How does the cravat work? Like, who do you trust to help guide you? And it doesn't have to be your most recent book, any of your historical romance novels. Just make sure you let us know which one it is.
I thought you were going to ask what time period we wanted to travel
She was
to.
all
And
ready for that.
well, I wasn't, because if I just thought like 1973, and I was like, don't say that, because why? That's so random. But yeah, so I'm glad you didn't ask that. That's what I've got. Well, I would pick one of the characters from A Sure Thing, so I could go with them on a bicycle ride, because that would, in addition to wanting to write this book for the fun research and collaborative possibilities, I really just wanted to write about Victorian bicycles. And also bicycles generally. Again, watch Rad. Bicycle prom scene, best, most romantic scene of all time. Sort of. You put 5 minutes on YouTube, you can decide for yourself. But yeah, so I guess I would very much like to get shown how to ride an ordinary, a penny farthing, with the big wheel, because I already had one facial reconstructive surgery after a bicycle accident.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a shark cartilage.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was a BMX, so it was really low to the ground. So I think if it's also on the beach, I would land in the sand.
So who's helping you through this?
Yeah.
I think maybe Muriel.
I
but
feel like
she-
Muriel would be a little bit more sensible than Kit.
Yeah, you're right. I guess I would take it slower with Muriel. It'd be better. That's the safer choice. I would, and
I
would.
Joanna's basically like, I really don't need them. I'm at home with Victorian bicycles by myself. Like,
I just thought when there's a gang of bicycle bros who have to kind of think through their own problems, their own toxic masculinity. They kind of come along. But maybe one of the Mutton Wheelers. I feel like that could be a experience of learning for both of us.
Yeah. I mean, because we have to be careful too, because they can't snitch, mess up the timeline, So I don't know if with bicycle bros.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Because I've also revealed that I'm from the future.
You have. I feel like a sure thing is no longer a sure thing. Like, it is all over the place.
Ruined everything right now. That's what you've done, because you can't reveal because it comes from time. But then you're going to ask them to guide you through time, but you can't reveal that you're from another time.
No, you can to that person, but they're your one person.
Okay.
But they wouldn't tell, because I would have facts about bicycles today.
That's what I'm
they would
saying.
want. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Got it. So it's a trade. Word. Yeah. Okay. What about you, Elizabeth?
I know.
And
Her brain is like dying. I would probably say Rosalind. And if you've read Queen Bee or Lady Night yet, Rosalind is and I just finished her book. That's why my brain is there. But and so that's going to be like Bridgerton meets She's the Man. She actually dresses like her cousin to enroll at Cambridge University because women weren't allowed to attend. And Rosalind, in book 1, people describe her as boy crazy, but it's actually a mask that she puts on to put off potential suitors, because she wants to meet somebody smart that she can talk to, and she's not ready to get married to anyone. So she's actually a genius in disguise. So she's super smart. She built her own telescope. Like, she's just really, really, really bright. And I think that she would be an interesting person, especially when I tell her that we've been to the moon. Like, her brain will explode with awesomeness.
I feel like
because I have a scene in it where she's looking at the moon, with a telescope she built.
You guys would have too much fun, I feel.
Yeah, I like that whole idea, though. I feel like women in general tend to put on masks depending with who they are. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's also very different with her friends, with her friends who aren't at school with her family, with us, her parents. And you know, we all do that to an extent. I remember, I mean, before I became an author, I worked on Wall Street, and I had a different mask then to deal with, you know, an old boys club and fitting in and, you know, being taken seriously, looking as
Wow.
cute as I do. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Before I was an
did,
author, I was on
100
Wall
years ago.
Street. Like
I
what?
do kind of want to
bars.
about that.
That's a book right there.
I know.
I was in technology.
Wow. I'm just mouth again.
These women are amazing, aren't they? I know.
know.
I could just
I know.
listen to them all day.
You being there was resistance. I love it. What about you,
It felt
Elizabeth?
like it sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm so bad at stuff like this. You know, I'm bad at stuff.
It's
like
only gonna
this.
get worse. Yeah, no, but you guys, I love Elizabeth. My questions are only gonna get worse for you.
You're, because I take them really seriously. I take them
know, I'm
way
like,
too
just let
seriously.
go, just let
I'm
go.
just like, this means a lot to me. I don't know why. I think that if you were gonna go to one of my characters and say, "I'm from the future," what's going on here? It would be the character in my first book, Violet.
That was my
Yeah.
pick. That's what I was thinking.
I see
Yeah,
it.
because she'd be like, "Cool, let's do it." Like, what's you know, she'd just be like completely open to it because she's you know, scientists. They're like, yeah, let's run with it until we run into a brick wall, right? Let's figure this out. And if we're wrong, that's okay because it proves something else. And
Yeah.
that is what I love about science, and that is what I love about writing about these women is that if you're wrong, it's okay to be wrong. You're supposed to be wrong sometimes. You're not. Everyone's not always right. Like that's the whole point of science. The whole point of science is, can we do this? No, we can't. Okay, can we do this? No, we can't. Can we do? You know, that's like there's such a fear of being wrong right now, and everybody's got to be an expert at something. Everyone's got to know best. And I just feel like that's a bad way to be, you know? I
Yeah.
just feel like, no, just say, oh, it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would be like, ladies, we have real underwear in the future. There's no more slits in your drawers.
Yes, that's right. We have crotches.
Also, there's flushing toilets. You don't have to use a gravy boat under your skirts.
Tampons.
Lipstick is gonna kill you. Yeah. And
All
blush.
good.
Oh, and Ada Lovelace is a woman, invented the first computer.
Love Ada. Okay, so we're almost at question time from the audience, both virtually and in person. But before we do, I want to play a quick game. I had to source these, confirm that the Lady Rose is looking at me. I had to talk to my Gen Z coworker. I am a proud millennial. Okay, any millennials in here? Whoop. Oh yeah, okay,
Oh, they're
come hard.
representing.
Yes, millennials. Okay, but I had to talk to my Gen Z colleagues or zillennials. They like to argue. Can you imagine we're in a time now where it's like you might want to be a millennial? Like, whoa, for so long they were dogging us. But I had to check in with the Gen Z folks about
Answer Gen Z questions.
you will. Okay, I had to ask them about these words, confirm that they were what I think they mean, and we're gonna do a little word association.
Oh, I love it. Yay.
Okay, so for each of these words/phrases that I definitely know what they mean, I want you to tell me which of your characters you think of and why is optional. Okay.
Can I go first and say skibbity toilet to Elizabeth?
Is that Gen Alpha?
No, that's Alpha.
That's Alpha. They're a little different. They're a little different. Okay. So we'll start easy, I think. What's a character? Already, you guys
Way too much fun.
are
So
freezing.
you just amuse yourself.
Okay. Which of your characters would you say might someone say that it has them going feral?
Well, this is you. This is you have something for this.
I would call myself going feral.
I would agree.
She's meant you.
One of my characters is a marmoset.
So,
So
okay.
maybe Fritz the marmoset. Because
but
Or
going
does
feral.
going feral mean something else?
Yeah.
I love.
Somebody tell her. Who's gonna tell her?
Who's gonna tell? I'll tell her. Going feral means, and Gen Zers, feel free to correct me, but like you as a person are like feverish for this character.
Yeah, hot.
Yeah, the marmoset.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely. And the marmoset gets a love interest that it doesn't work out, but
Love it. Love it. Yes. Yes. Any other takers? You're gonna answer one of these, Elizabeth. You will.
I think probably like Zia is probably feral for Rafi, and they have like a little hand touching moment.
Yes.
And like, yeah, there's a lot of angst and I impaling. I'm trying to be gentle.
I am failing. I agree. I agree. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Secretly, he is secretly going feral for
He
her.
is
Yes.
feral for her.
Yes.
Yeah.
She wears his ring that he steals, and where's the ring that she stole his ring and wears it against her chest.
Yeah.
Come
Okay.
on.
I love it.
Super
Elizabeth? Fine. You get to go first on the next one. Which of your characters would you describe as someone who might give readers the ick?
Oh, the ick. So many of my characters are based on ick. They're built of ick. They are the embodiment of ick. Yeah. So so some of my characters that some of the men that I write are redeemed, right? Like
Mhm.
they're some of the men like in A Perfect Equation, right? Which is all about a woman who had premarital sex and the way that she was treated by both the person she had sex with and in his circle. You know, they were operating out of they were just operating the way out of the mindset that you had in the 1800s, this which we still have to a certain extent about women's sexuality compared to men's sexuality, right? And they were icky, and the men who are in power and forcing women to and and not just forcing women but diminishing women, like they are pretty icky. There's some pretty icky
Okay, so who?
characters. So let's see. What book is this? Oh, The Dad.
Yeah,
The Dad
yeah.
and A
Gives the
Lady
ick.
Sparks of
Mhm.
Flame is an icky man. He gives me
It's
the
you
ick.
changing ick for me.
No, he gives you the ick, but he's also icky.
Yeah.
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 Bad guy.
Bad guy.
No, there's no redeeming him. I usually like to redeem people
Yeah.
because I don't believe
He's
that
also gone at this point, so it's
He's
kind of
also-
easier to.
he's also dead.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not a spoiler. It's not a spoiler. Man's dead. Say anything you want about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amalie?
I'd probably say Rafi's uncle because he's
Mm.
just really
Yes.
greedy
the
and
Viscount.
he wants to
We don't like
destroy this orphanage so he can open a gaming hell, and he's just really gross, and I feel like he's gross towards the young women as well. I think he suggests that he wants to marry one of them. They're like, no, ew.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Ick.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so ick.
Joanna's like,
in the second book in the series, The Runaway Duchess, Lavinia had a prior attachment with somebody that her understanding that I can't even say he had was the ick. Like my students
he
could
was
say-
the ick.
he was the ick, and she had her process of because he was handsome and rich and
Yes.
promised her all of these things and was awful
Yeah.
ick. Anyway, so her sort of understanding who he would have become if if he hadn't it's not died tragically in a
Yeah.
classic 19th century aristocratic
Mwah.
yacht
So-
accident.
It's so good. So
right?
good.
Um,
it's the stuff we love.
right. Yeah, so I think that
Yes.
character.
Well, we can't end on a bad note. So the last one I'm going to do is arguably a Gen Z alpha situation. But which of your characters, Lady Rose, I cannot make eye contact with you right now. Which of your characters do you think has Riz?
Riz.
Yeah, you know what that is, do you? Do you know what that
Which-
is?
We learned today was short for charisma.
It is short for
Mhm.
charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I low key Sam.
Oh, wow. Zing.
Put your tongue back in your mouth.
Low key, my favorite hero is Sam in this book because he's
Feral
got
situation.
Feral.
so feral.
Wow, you guys are like,
God.
and the students become the teacher.
Sam is he's they call him a golden retriever, but I just feel like he's more and then less than that. He's just he's low-key my favorite hero. He's just a goofball, sweetheart, but also like super sexy. And
Yeah, it's a situation.
he is
Yeah.
he just when he walks into a room, like everybody is like, oh, Sam, what a weird but very cool dude.
Yeah,
Like he's just
yeah,
got
yeah.
he until he falls over, he's got command of the room, and then he falls over, then everybody laughs at him. Then he gets back up, he's got command of the room again. Yeah, Sam is Riz.
I think it's an acquired Riz. Yeah.
So it really so here we go. And this is why I married the man I married. Now does it make
Yeah,
sense?
it
Yeah.
does. It
So
does.
I enjoy a hero who does not take himself seriously. I like an emotionally constipated hero, obviously. I like an alpha hero. I like it all. But I especially enjoy a hero who does not take himself completely seriously and he knows he's okay with where he falls down. I enjoy anyone that does not take themselves completely serious, other than me. I take myself very seriously.
Elizabeth Everett is so sus.
On my list, we just didn't have
Dude,
time.
I'm the OG is what I am. Okay, go ahead.
Amalie
What is
wins the
happening?
game. Joanna's horrified right now. Okay, reservation on your part, Amalie.
Probably Rafi, just because he's
Yeah,
the
he got it.
original player, original rake, and the hair is freaking amazing. And he knows it. He walks into a room and everybody looks at him. But everybody looks at Zia too. So they're a great couple.
Perfect couple, yeah.
Love them.
Well, I'll also then talk about the hair because I'll say Kit from Sure Thing.
Okay.
I find he's very charismatic.
I will never utter that word.
but I kept getting like the cover designer, the artist was
He got
amazing,
charisma?
and much charisma. And what generation is this? I don't even know. But I kept saying, "Oh, can you make his hair even more wild?" So then we kept getting like more and more hair kicked up to match the
That
the
first
energy
scene,
within.
the first scene, the meet cute in this book, a Sure Thing. That first scene when you meet Kit, you're like,
That was me rehabilitating my own traumatic bicycle accident and making it amazing instead of plastic surgerizing. Yeah.
I love it.
but for the first moment you meet him, you're just like, I love you.
that
He's
is
just
what Riz
very-
does.
Yes.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what Riz
I would
does.
say Kit is the epitome of Riz.
Love it. Well, we have time for maybe a few questions from the audience. Anyone? Or online?
Fun terms.
Come on.
Ask some fly
Fun words
questions,
that we-
guys. Oh, she didn't even hear that. Ask
No,
some
I didn't.
fly questions.
No,
That's-
we're getting brushed out. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you so much. It's been so great. Question for you about writing romance with an eye towards resistance in the current day, and how, to the extent that you do, how you take on the challenge of writing men, especially straight cis men, in historical settings.
So again, I don't.
Sorry. Yeah. How do you I'm always telling people what to do and I never do
have
it.
to
when I'm
repeat it, but
here. Oh
we'll
my
write it down.
gosh. The question is around writing romance as resistance, but specifically writing straight cis men. And I guess I'll fill in the blank, like having them be attractive essentially in a world where they are kind of the problem. I added so much to your question, but I think that was the essence.
And I'm just gonna say that just like I don't assume that before the 1960s everyone was terrible to the people who are different in their lives. I'm just gonna assume that there were great heterosexual men who weren't burdened by toxicity and who weren't drowning and who didn't, you know, it's, I remember there was during the first Trump term, there was a lot of talk in my house because I have, he was 16 at the time. One of my children was a male, and we talked a lot with him about consent after what happened with Trump. And I just remember my stepfather saying, I can't understand how anyone would, he just literally could not wrap his brain around how anyone could behave that way. And there are men like that. There are men like him who would never, it would never occur to them to be abusive or to be oppressive or to be rapey or to be whatever. It just wouldn't. There are men like that out there. Those are the men that I write in my romances. They're the men that I live with. They're the men that I raise. They're the men that my children bring home as friends and companions. They're out there. We have to, you know, we have to remember that it's not all bad.
Period. Oh, no. Ellipses.
I was gonna say I like to show kind of like a range of masculinities in you know, my books. And like with a short thing, for example, there are these toxic bicycle bros, and they're each kind of grappling with the legacies of their toxic fathering, being fathered, I guess. Yeah, and so I guess to just pick up on what Elizabeth's saying, that there are lots of different ways that people react to the particularities of their family cultures, the larger culture they're in, their experiences that they've had, and to kind of show that nothing is monolithic is I'm interested in doing in my books when I think through identity. And I think when things are naturalized and normalized as like the one thing, then we're in trouble. And when you start picking it apart and showing that every supposedly monolithic identity contains difference, then you can start maybe unknotting some of the knotted up things that lead to the violent, horrible behaviors that we see every day around us.
Thank you.
I
Oh.
feel like I just add I just want to add that I write the men that I have in my life or want to see. I want men who support the women that are written in the books, men who, you know, support female agency, men who make a woman get there first and all the time. Okay, nobody heard that. Come on, people's pleasure. Come on, guys. A guy who knows what he's doing in the bedroom. Yeah. You know, I mean, just somebody that's supportive. And I was like, laugh because, like, you know, in my 20s, I dated the love that bad boy thing. But sometimes they're not good boys. They're not at all. And that misogyny is, you know, it shows up, and then you want the guy who's the nice guy because then you appreciate them more. And I have that. I mean, my husband and I will be married 25 years in August, so
Oh.
he is doing something right.
We had an online question and then maybe one more and then we'll wrap up. And repeat the question. What upcoming books are you looking forward to, especially those that have marginalized characters of some sort?
Can I cheat for a second? Because this just came out, but A Gentleman's Gentleman by TJ Alexander is really fantastic. And it's another trans historical. It's in the Regency and it's really fantastic. So it's cheating because but it's actually better than cheating because I'm saying you can go get it.
You can get it right now. Yes.
I'm really excited about Nikki Payne's next book,
Oh,
The
yeah.
Princess and the PI. I am
Mhm.
so excited about this book. It's not historical, but God, I cannot wait. I'm gonna try and like go through some back channels and get myself an early version because Nikki Payne is one of the funniest women on the planet. She just is. She's just, and I know the characters that she's got for the PI. I love him
Yes.
already. Like, oh, I'm feral
What have I done?
for Nikki Payne.
I'm gonna go with I don't know if this book is out yet, but it's Love Requires Cardamom. It's by my imprint, Joy Revolution, which is part of Penguin Random House. Shout out to my editor, Bria. But this imprint was founded by Nikki and David Yoon. And it is they publish books that feature characters of color written by people of color. All the artists are artists of color. The artist of color did this book, the cover for this book. And it's really a heartfelt, awesome travel story with art, and it's really clever and really sweet. I don't know if it's out yet. Love Requires Cardamom.
I
don't
can't
know if it
remember.
is.
I've seen
And
it
it's
covered
got
like
a
an
print,
orange
and
kinda
it's
color.
really,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen it,
I
but
read it and
I
I
don't
couldn't
remember.
stop. Like, I couldn't put it down. It was just so lovely, and it's YA.
Love
But
requires
also,
cardamom.
everything by Joy Revolution is awesome. I feel so proud to be part of that imprint just because of what they're doing. Because you find like they start and then they just either disappear or, fold. And I just hope they keep going because I think we just need more stories.
Question over here.
Jonathan Haidt, I don't have his name, wrote a book called The Righteous Mind. He talks about how people kind of get ingrained based on where they are in society and who they're friends with. And that the way to sort of change people is to expand communities and make people kind of talk to each other and understand how to transform society. So in your books, obviously, there must have been people who were ingrained in some way in the society that they were in, and then had to kind of change in order to continue to love this person that they loved. So I was wondering if you could talk about how that happened with certain of your characters and what that might teach us about how to have dialogues today.
I feel like this is a trick one. So what was the name of the yes. Okay. A person by the name of Jonathan who talks a lot about societal impact on how people are able to both interact and love. So just wondering how you look at and talk about the essentially societal impact and the ways that people might need to change in order for that love and that agency to happen. Kind of ish. Maybe.
I think a lot of my books have people of different classes. My first book, Ladies Plumber for Love, definitely there's a woman from the aristocratic class and a man from the working class. And then in the last in The Love Remedy, it for the sake of being published, you always sort of have I at least have some aristocratic tethers because everybody looks a duke. But I really think that, and after having lived too in Britain, it's still a very classist society. Like class is still very present. It's still very important to them. And I like to examine class when I'm looking at relationships. And I like to examine when the woman is from an upper class and has actually more power to a certain extent than the man does, and vice versa. Because I think that with a sense of class comes a sense of superiority. And until you let go of that sense of class, you're always going to consider yourself superior. And that power dynamic in a relationship is always going to be toxic. So I can't say I always solve it, but I always try and put an eye towards that. And I think that if we're going to have conversations amongst ourselves, then we have to admit to our own privilege. And I think that some of my characters do a good job of saying, yes, I'm privileged. Yes. I think Violet in Ladies for Love, she recognizes towards the end how much privilege she has. And she understands, if you have children and you're working, you don't have time to come to this club. We're going to have to rectify that. We're going to have to do something about it. So the recognition of privilege, I think, in real life and in romance.
I think in Lady Night, the girls, when they talk about Frankenstein, they use the metaphor of the man versus the monster. And they talk about like how that's reflective of the society that they live in, whether he was nature versus nurture, whether he was made into a monster, made into, something monstrous that was not accepted. That's why he became a murderer. And I mean, for people who didn't even read Frankenstein, I think reading Lady Night would be an interesting, because it's almost like a book within a book discussion. But the girls do have a lot of healthy discussion about, privilege. You just mentioned that, about their stations in life and what they want out of the world, right? And how to get it when all the rules are against you, when, societal expectations are not what you would want for yourself. They talk about all those things. And I think, they come from different cultures, when you asked about that, like, so they learn about each other. And, Rafi, his family is from the Qajar, I think that's how you say it, Qajar dynasty. I don't know if I said that right or wrong. I might look him.
That was one of those words I read, and I was
Yeah.
like, dynasty.
Yeah,
In
I
the-
think it's Qajar, but I could be wrong. Anyway, and I do talk about Persian culture quite a bit. I am Persian. I have Persian ancestry. And in the author's note, I write about, what inspired like his character and how the women also, subverted the rules in their society via poetry and teachers and art. And I think all that's important.
Yeah, I mean, in a short thing, the characters have to stretch their ideas about identity and belonging and gender, and that kind of happens across the book. And I think in their books and a lot of romance novels that I love, like characters, they reckon with their place in the world and with who they are and with what they want, and you see them sort of, change and like shift that place across the course of a book, and that I think is one of the joys. But I feel like reading itself is a really amazing way to kind of move beyond the circle of people that you actually have present in your life and like have a bigger dialogue and engagement with the world. And so I feel like reading can strengthen your empathy, that it can allow you to experience things on the page that you haven't experienced in life or never would experience in life. It's really empowering to see representations where you're like, oh, that's like me. I mean, I also engaged in self-harm. It's like really, as a young person, it's like really amazing to like see somebody having a beautiful life in a book. But it's also really amazing to read books about people that you have nothing in common with and to experience that too. And so, I mean, I love romance, so I would say like read a lot of romances, but really I'd say just read a lot of books generally, and books in translation also, like from around the world. In the US, we read fewer books in translation than people read in other countries. And I just think there is something just expanding of your consciousness, and that can really help you see where you're situated differently. And I think that is a really great starting point to actually change your life and take that first step.
Wow, you guys are awesome. Yes, I agree. Well, huge round of applause for our amazing authors.
Still more and more water.
We love an indoor pool. We do. So
I miss that.
yeah, before we do the great shift, a few things. As I said, we have tons of their books upstairs if you would like to get them signed. We will be lining up right over here where you see the word games. Maybe you can't see it, but it's right here on here. And then we're going to be looping the line back through the kids section, and we'll have some ECB folks around to help out with that process. In a moment, not yet. I would love when everybody gets up, if you could just fold your chair and just gently place it against one of the shelves that are nearby, and we will come around and collect them. So, but before we start moving, I'm going to take a picture of the amazing and incredible authors right here with each of your books. And then we will do the great shift, but not before, guys. All right. Thank you again.